Hello, Internet. With many US states starting to carefully reopen after being locked down due to the coronavirus, many of the national parks are starting to phase in their reopenings as well. But with so many parks and so much conflicting information everywhere, it can be tricky to know what's open and what's not. That's why I visited the park websites of all 62 national parks and researched what's opening and when. Now before I begin, keep in mind that the status of these parks could change at any time. Double check the status on the park's website before you visit. Also, if you do choose to visit any of the national parks, remember to take the proper safety precautions. Avoid large crowds, keep at least 6 feet from strangers, wear a mask, and also be sure to check the travel restrictions of the states themselves, which I don't go into detail here. It might seem like the great outdoors would be the best place to socially distance yourself, but remember that a lot of these parks have very congested attractions. Yellowstone's Old Faithful or the Everglades Anhinga Trail can get very crowded very easily. Remember that even if a park is open, it's very likely that visiting these bigger attractions may be restricted. Now with that being said, there's a lot of information here, so let's dive right in. In Acadia, all park roads and facilities are closed, including campgrounds and visitor centers. The park itself isn't closed, but considering you have to drive so much to get around the park, it may as well be. Anyone who lives more than 30 minutes away is discouraged from visiting. Bus services have also been postponed and are not likely to run for the remainder of the year. As of April 28th, the plan is to open visitor centers on June 1st and campgrounds on June 15th. In American Samoa, the park is open, but it's pretty much impossible to get there. Flights to Pago Pago are suspended, and you're not likely to get a boat ride. The island has pretty much shut itself out from the rest of the world, but as a result, they haven't had a single coronavirus case, so good for them. Also, in researching this, the most common bit of news I've seen is that the US Mint has started creating national park-themed quarters, and American Samoa's features fruit bats. Not the best timing on those. Arches is currently closed, but is planning a phased reopening starting May 29th. Roads, trails, and bathrooms will be open. Visitor centers and campgrounds as well as the Fiery Furnace will remain closed. Badlands is actually one of the few national parks to remain open during the coronavirus outbreak. Visitor centers and entrance fee stations are closed, but roads, trails, and campgrounds in the North Unit remain open. This is probably because of the backcountry wilderness nature of exploring the Badlands. The South Unit is closed, however. This is in order to comply with the Oglala Sioux Tribe Shelter-in-Place Ordinance. Big Bend is completely closed right now. A big reason for this is outlined in the National Park website. It states that Panther Junction is over 100 miles from the Regional Medical Center in Alpine, Texas, which has only 25 beds and 4 ventilators. Overflow from that hospital is directed to El Paso, an additional 100 miles from the park. Basically, if there was a coronavirus outbreak in the park, it would be very difficult to get the proper medical care to enough people. The website does state that they are hoping to have the park reopened in some form by June 1st. At Biscayne, all land facilities are closed and rafting of marine vessels is prohibited until further notice. There has been no indication of when the park facilities will be opened, and given the underwater nature of the park, it's difficult to predict. Black Canyon of the Gunnison is closed but is planning a phased reopening starting May 15th. Beginning May 15th, the park will reopen access to the South Rim Drive, North Rim for day use only, Inner Canyon routes for day use only with permits, and Red Rock Canyon for permit holders only. Visitor centers and campgrounds will remain closed. Keep in mind that Gunnison County is currently under public health orders that restrict travel to essential reasons only, and that visitors to Gunnison County are prohibited. Bryce Canyon has already begun its phased reopening on April 30th. Key areas that are open include the main road and all viewpoints to Rainbow Point, trails within the Bryce Amphitheater area, though the Navajo Loop and Horse Trail will remain closed. Most restrooms will be open, the visitor center and bookstore will also be open. No overnight accommodations will be allowed though. Canyonlands reopening is taking a similar approach to Arches. A phased reopening will begin May 29th. All park roads, trails, restrooms, and commercial operations as previously permitted will be opened. Backcountry permits will start being handed out May 30th. Visitor center and campgrounds will remain closed. Capitol Reef began its phased reopening on May 5th. As of May 11th, day use is available in the remote South District and remote North Districts. Overnight stays will be permitted in Cedar Mesa and Cathedral Valley campgrounds only. Gooseneck Overlook Trail and Sunset Point Trail, as well as all non-trailhead pullouts along State Route 24 will be open. The park website has a much bigger list of what trails are open or closed, so check it out if you're planning on visiting the park. Just keep in mind that the visitor center will be closed. Carlsbad Cavern is closed with no anticipated reopening date. Given the nature of cave parks and the confined congested trails, it's tough to see this one opening anytime soon. Channel Islands is open for private boater landings. Island Packers boat service has suspended activity through May 14th, but I wasn't able to find anything on their website saying what the plan was after that. Previously, they had suspended operations through May 4th. Visitor Center and Ventura Harbor are closed. Congaree is closed until further notice. There is no set date for a reopening and the 2020 Firefly Festival has been cancelled. Crater Lake is closed. They have begun planning for a reopening, but no date has been provided. Cuyahoga Valley is open, but there are numerous closures. It might be best to check the park website if you're planning on visiting, as some of the closures have to do with the trails being damaged. I would like to point out that the visitor centers are closed, as well as the Brandywine Falls Boardwalk. The park website also reminds you not to climb Brandywine Falls. Death Valley is closed with no anticipated reopening date. It should probably be noted that most of the California parks are closed with no anticipated reopening date. At Denali, the visitor center and campgrounds are closed, but the park is open to traffic up to mile 30. Backpacking permits are also available online. I can see why Denali would be open, considering that the park has very few actual trails, and if you're backpacking, it's extremely unlikely that you'll see another human. Shuttle bus systems weren't mentioned on the park website, but if I had to guess, it seems like it would be unlikely for them to be running this year, at least not at full capacity. At Dry Tortugas, all islands, docks, and campgrounds are closed. Marine waters and harbors are still open. Basically, you can take your boat into the waters of the park, but that's about it. I don't think the Yankee Freedom will be running anytime soon. The Everglades began phase reopening on May 4th. The main park road from Homestead to Flamingo is open. Marine waters and beach wilderness campsites are available, but much of the park is still closed, including the Anhinga Trail, public campgrounds, and Shark Valley. Gates of the Arctic is, well, open. It's hard to close down a park that has no trails or buildings. The toughest part is going to be getting an air taxi into the park, but based on the links on the park website, it looks like the air taxis are open for business. At Gateway Arch, the grounds are open, but the Arch and park buildings are closed until further notice. No reopening date was provided. Glacier Bay is open, but very limited in what you can do. Bartlett Cove Campground and all facilities are closed. Bartlett Cove Public Dock is limited use only. And considering that 70% of the park's revenue comes from boat rides and cruise ships, there's not going to be much to do if you do make it to this park, since most of these services are probably going to be unavailable. Visitor Services has pushed back their start date from June 1st to July 1st. Glacier National Park is closed until further notice. There's been no reopening date. At least at this time of the year, much of the Going to the Sun Road is still covered in snow anyways, so a lot of the park is inaccessible, even if it was open. The Grand Canyon is allowing limited South Rim reopening starting May 15th till the 18th. You can only enter the park from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., and all trails and facilities are closed. This means no going down the Bright Angel Trail. Viewpoints at the South Rim will be available for day use. For a more detailed explanation of what is and is not open, the park website has a very detailed map. At Grand Teton National Park, phased reopenings will begin May 18th. The main road, some restroom facilities, and seasonal day use trails will be open. Riverbank and lakeshore fishing, visitor centers, campgrounds, lodging, backcountry permits, and boating operations are still closed or unavailable. Great Basin National Park has already begun a phased reopening. Park roads and trails are open, but visitor centers, campgrounds, and restaurants remain closed. Great Sand Dunes National Park remains closed until further notice with no reopening date announced. Great Smoky Mountains National Park began a phased reopening on May 9th. There is a lot of information on the park website about what's open and what's closed, so I won't say too much here. Check for a link in the description. But I will note that the Cades Cove Loop Road is open, while the Alum Cave Trail and Klingman's Dome Tower are closed. There are some backcountry campsites available, but not everywhere. Again, check the park website if you do plan to visit the park, and be careful to avoid large crowds. Guadalupe Mountains National Park is closed until further notice with no reopening date available. Haleakala has the summit, visitor centers, backcountry permit use, and all special events closed or canceled. The Hosmer Campground, Kipihalu Campground, all overlooks, and front country trails, including Hosmer Grove Trail, Pipiway Trail, Kuloa Point, and Kahake Trail will remain open to public use. I hope I didn't butcher those names too badly. I haven't been to this park yet. While Haleakala is partially open, Hawai'i Volcanoes are closed until further notice. There is no reopening date available. At Hot Springs, visitor centers, Gulfa Gorge Campground and picnic area, and the Hot Springs Mountain Tower are closed. Gift shops and restaurants in town are also closed, but trails and roads remain open. Indiana Dunes National Park is open, but the Porter Beach area and all buildings are closed, as well as the Dunewood Campground. All other park trails and most beaches of the national park remain open, but visitors are encouraged to seek other recreation areas if an area is crowded. Isle Royale is closed through June 14th, but the Houghton Visitor Center is scheduled to reopen May 18th. Unfortunately, the visitor center is about 61 miles from the island itself. Joshua Tree is closed until further notice with no reopening date available. In Katmai, Brooks Camp is closed until July 1st. The rest of the park isn't closed, but just like many of the other Alaskan national parks, it's so remote and inaccessible that it doesn't really need to close. Kenai Fjords has closed all buildings. The road to Exit Glacier is closed, but that's because it's still covered in snow. So far, the Major Marines boat tour has canceled everything through May 22nd, while the Northwestern Fjord Tour has canceled everything for the year 2020. If Major Marine Tours does open, they will not have a park ranger communicating with the passengers on the boat. Kings Canyon is currently closed to all visitors until at least May 25th. However, Highway 180 is open to through traffic. Kobuk Valley's Northwest Arctic Heritage Center is closed, but as for the park wilderness itself, it's open similarly to Gates of the Arctic. The park is open, but getting there by air taxi will be the tricky part. At Lake Clark, the Port Allsworth Park headquarters, visitor center, public use cabins, Richard Proneck Historic Site, Hope Creek Campsite, and the Woodlot Road in Port Allsworth are all closed. Other than that, it's Alaskan wilderness, so if you can get there, it should be open. Lassen Volcanic National Park is closed until further notice with no reopening date available. Mammoth Cave is a cave park, so pretty much all the main attractions and tours are closed until further notice. The trails above the cave system are open though, but those probably aren't the main reasons why you're visiting the park. Mesa Verde National Park is closed and has apparently been canceling tour reservations all the way into August. With no reopening date available, it seems like a sign that this park might not be open for a while. Mount Rainier has closed all of the park roads. Backcountry areas are open for dispersed recreation, but recreation above 10,500 feet is prohibited. Check the park website for more information on where to enter these backcountry areas. Technically, yes, the park is open, but if all the roads are closed, then for the average visitor, then the park is essentially closed. North Cascades is closed until further notice with no reopening dates available. They did, however, just reopen State Route 20 for through traffic. On the Olympic National Park website, it says that all park beaches, facilities, roads, campgrounds, restrooms, the Shishi Trailhead, the Second Beach Trailhead, the Spruce Railroad Trail, all park concessions, and recreational fishing are closed or unavailable. And also says that there is a state of emergency in the Olympic Peninsula. It doesn't technically say that the park is closed, but basically, the park is closed. They're beginning to plan phased reopenings, but there's no specific date set yet, especially if the county has issued a state of emergency. Petrified Forest National Park is closed entirely as of March 24th and has no reopening date available. Pinnacles is closed until further notice and has no reopening date available. They did honor all campground reservations when the park initially closed, but if you didn't have a reservation, it's probably too late to visit the park. I did say that pretty much all California parks are closed indefinitely, but Redwood National Park does have a reopening planned. As of May 11th, they have a phased reopening that includes opening all park trails except for Tall Trees Grove. Freshwater Beach is open, but all visitor centers, campgrounds, and most roads are closed. Rocky Mountain National Park has a phased reopening start date of May 27th. Portions of Moraine Park and Glacier Basin campgrounds will be open June 4th, and these will be the only campgrounds available. Wilderness backpacking permits will be issued starting May 27th. Shuttle buses will be operating, but will only allow 15 passengers per trip. In Sayuero, roads and trails are open. Visitor centers, restrooms, and comfort stations are closed. It looks like there are backcountry campsites available, except for the Douglas Spring Campground, which is closed because somebody vandalized the backcountry toilet and made it unsafe. Sequoia National Park, much like Kings Canyon, is closed to all visitors until at least May 25th. Shenandoah National Park is completely closed. They are making plans for a phased reopening, but there's no official date set yet. Theodore Roosevelt National Park opened on May 9th. Pretty much everything is open except for visitor centers, buildings, and campgrounds. Backcountry camping is permitted. On the US Virgin Islands, trails, beaches, parking areas, and waters are open. Visitor centers, campgrounds, buildings, and food services are closed. Going through everything to get to this park, though, might be a problem. I'm not even entirely sure where you would spend the night if you did get there. In Voyageurs, all tent camping and houseboat rentals are suspended through May 17th. Visitor centers are closed, but otherwise the park is open for day use only. As of now, permits issued after the 17th are being honored unless Minnesota's stay-at-home order is extended. This time of year, though, it's possible that many of the lakes are still frozen and that the park is still mostly inaccessible. White Sands is closed until further notice with no reopening date available. Not the best start for America's newest national park. Wind Cave is closed indefinitely. There are no tours available, but the park website says this is due to elevator repairs, so tours probably weren't being offered anyways. Visitor centers and campgrounds are closed, but the grasslands above the park may be open for hiking. At Wrangell St. Elias, all buildings operated by the National Park Service are closed, which includes the Kennecott Mines area and all campgrounds. The park is open, but it would be pretty impossible to close the biggest park in the country. Okay, so Yellowstone. Yellowstone is beginning a phased reopening on May 18th. Only the south and east entrances of Yellowstone will be open. The roadways north of Norris and Canyon Village will be closed. The reason for the other entrances being closed is because Idaho and Montana still have out-of-state travel restrictions. Visitors will be able to access restrooms, gas stations, trails, and boardwalks. Commercial tour buses, lodging, campgrounds, backcountry permits, food services, boating, fishing, and visitor centers are still closed. There's quite a bit going on with Yellowstone during all of this, so double check the park website if you're planning to visit anytime soon. Yosemite is closed until further notice with no reopening date available. But hey, at least we keep getting cute animal photos and videos from the park employees still living in the park. And finally, Zion began a phased reopening on May 13th. The shuttle buses are closed, however. This is tricky because Zion really relies on the shuttle buses to get everybody around. The park website says that parking is extremely limited and that the scenic drive will be closed once parking is full. Check the park website for a full list of what's open and closed because there's a big list of both. Right now though, Angel's Landing and the Narrows are both closed, with the Narrows being closed due to high flow rates. There you have it, a list of what's open in all the national parks. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any information that I didn't list in this video about a park, or if I got something wrong, please leave a comment. If I get enough new information, I may do a follow-up video. And as a friendly reminder, remember to practice proper social distancing if you do plan to visit a park. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. I'm hoping to create more of these videos soon. Thanks for watching, and happy hiking.